everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast, an unofficial IB podcast made by IB students for IB students and other people alike.
For this episode, we have our special guest, Mr. Tim Bettine, our school's IB Diploma coordinator, IB psychology teacher, and also TOK teacher. So you can probably tell he's very well attuned with the IB Diploma.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Well, let's begin with a few introductory questions. How long have you been teaching the IB Diploma for?
Well, let's see. I started my first IB class. I was the IB history teacher, and I taught.
IB history teacher.
I taught IB history here in 2010.
2010. That's.
And then I pivoted over to psychology, which is why I came to RIS, was to teach psychology in 2009. So yeah, since 2010 was the first IB.
Been working with IB since 2010. So that's 10 years of experience.
10 years.
That's a long time. Yeah.
Has those years gone by well, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, actually, I think you'll look back in how hard it is as a teacher to teach IB, because there's a couple of different. It depends on the subjects, but some subjects they really fill the curriculum with lots of content, so you have to try to figure out how to space it out, scope and sequence of that material. And then there's some classes like IB psychology where they don't give you any information. They just say,
sources from everywhere else.
Teach this theory and that's it. And so it's really, the IB puts they put syllabuses together based on a lot of, expert educators and experts in the field as well. So that's why there's kind of a diversity among the syllabuses.
Something had to have drawn you into the IB Diploma at first, right? For you to, I guess, want to try and teach it.
Well, as an international teacher, it's as a credential. It's for the students. There is no better program in terms of preparing students for university, but also preparing them for a world where they might have elegant problems that are going to require a lot of
critical thinking.
Stuff
that really hurts my brain.
A lot of Well, most brains are try to run away from critical thinking, and that's but that happens. No, I mean, it was something the school had done. The school used to be, really an IB school with some AP courses. And so we've kind of changed a lot in the 10, 12 years that I've been here, where there are 12 years. We see a lot more students doing a full AP track. So there's pluses and minuses for that as a school. But I would say, what drew me to the IB was the freedom that it offered teachers, but then also the ways that students developed over the 2 years, particularly the diploma students.
Now, I've always wondered, and I've never been clear of what exactly does an IB coordinator do?
That's a great question.
Maybe
I have for this job, the description that they give you is about 25 bullet points, and it ranges everything. So it's a little bit of everything. There's expectations for me to talk to students almost as like a counselor about trying to decide what subjects to take. With considerations, again, there's considerations for the future in that, but most of the time I urge students to kind of stay in the present. What are you going to enjoy and things like that. But, I register students for all their exams. I coordinate with teachers for predicted grades for university. I administer all the exams. I have to account for all those exams. I have to work with any teachers specific teachers at our school for students that get special assessment needs. So some students get separate locations for their exams. I coordinate the invigilation schedule a little bit, but also then have to make sure all the teachers are aware. I register teachers for their workshops. I inform teachers and students when any changes and pending changes.
So it's in every sense of the word, you're the coordinator.
I send your scores to you.
Scores to parents.
Yeah, I
and
send.
the list goes on. And on.
I decide. I mean, based on you, but I tell the IB where to send your scores, what universities. So it's full on in the summertime when the exam results come out in July 5th. I'm pretty busy for the following week because students sometimes want to challenge their scores, ask for remarks. I also have to coordinate all the IA uploading, which I ask the teachers to do, but I kind of been one of the last lines of verification. If a file's too big to upload to the IB, I have to shrink it down. So there's but a lot of calendars, a lot of
logistics when it comes to the IB diploma.
Yeah, a lot of just making sure that the students don't get overwhelmed. Try to not overwhelm you.
But out of curiosity though, for the thing you mentioned back there about how IB definitely prepares its students for college or university, do you feel like the distinction only exists for preparing us for the workload, or is there some more lifelong benefit that we get from the IB diploma when we do go to college? Something that just puts us ahead of the game, more or less, compared to other students?
Yeah, I think way beyond the workload, way beyond the workload. I just the capacity to have an informed opinion or to make like a valid knowledge claim in a class. As you move into more sophisticated courses, especially if it's like a liberal arts kind of pathway that you've taken, or a liberal arts school where there's a humanities element in there, which offers a lot of ambiguity, a lot of opportunities to see multiple perspectives. The IB has already kind of laid that groundwork. And particularly then if we're talking about that really important skill of research, which you've already done all the way through. So having a more nuanced understanding of research in specific disciplines, even areas of knowledge, is I think the university teachers you're going to work with at the university are going to recognize the IB diploma student from the non-IB diploma student. I've heard that many times. I've heard students say, I talked in class, teacher goes, you did the IB diploma. And I don't know how that happens, but it's not like it's not a one-off thing. It's like
the IB coming off of us.
4 or 5 students have told me that's happened.
So you're saying you see a lot of development for IB students over time, like they gain these qualities slowly, or
2 years.
For these 2 years.
Yeah, over the 2 years, I would argue that you would see, you start off with like a scaffolding kind of approach depending on the class, and the idea is to not be a 7 at the beginning of August of year 1. The idea is to build capacity for knowledge, but then build whatever else is required for that subject. So if it's like language acquisition, like you're developing language skills, listening, literacy, speaking, stuff like that.
On the IB subjects, right? So when we choose to do the full diploma, we choose 5 different courses from different areas of subjects.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to something like AP, where if students would want to, they can take if students want to take lots of math courses, they can take calc and stats together. They can really specialize.
Mm-hmm.
What are your do you think IBs allows this kind of specialization too, or
do you think it's more important to have well-rounded students than somebody who specializes into different into one kind of field? It's definitely a tricky question.
I mean, I would imagine that in the grand vision of the program, which was developed in the 50s and has been refined over time, was to say, okay, I'm not the arts is something that I don't gravitate to, and the IB would say, well, too bad, you have to take an art, right? Because that would be because what we're trying to do is build balanced, learners,
well-rounded students.
And universities appreciate that. So it's a lot easier to be, elegant and creative in engineering when you have studied literature and when you've studied, visual architectures and things like that. Like when you've studied the world a certain way, that allows you to have to break out of maybe like existing schemas of work. So, and I bring that up. I say that all the time because I think that's something that's underappreciated is how much we want to break those down. We want to surprise students with, oh, I never thought of that, or I never thought that was something that was true, or I never looked at that perspective. So the IB means to do that. But like I look at like the math, and math is a very important subject in our school. Really, math is something that a lot of we put a lot of currency into. And I would argue that like the IB math experience is one that you just don't kind of just say, okay, AP. We get far more students getting 5s in the AP than we get 7s in math and the IB. So that should be, and it could be because a lot of our where are our best math students going or gravitating to? It's hard to say, but those are two different kinds of approaches. The current math program in IB means to say, okay, this is the kind of math that I'm interested in doing versus the kind of math that an engineer or a computer scientist might want to like dive into, the analytical math versus the applications style of maths. There's like 52 common elements between those maths, and you could do it at a higher level or standard level. So there is some wiggle room in there, and it's 2 years of like pretty intensive math study. The calculus is there, but I mean, again, like I look at the AP, and the most 5s given in the AP is in calculus. So I which tells me that the best math students in America takes the calculus, and you can only make that test so challenging that everybody who takes that, if they gatekeep and decide, okay, we've got 20 students, only you 10 are going to get to take the AP calculus because you qualified based on this criteria. In IB math, well, we try to counsel you and say, you're going to have a hard time in analysis. You might want to do applications or something like that, or you're going to have a hard time at the HL unless you do the SL.
Okay. But with the way that I guess the IB is changing this year, they're putting math into AA and AI instead of just math HL and I guess math studies.
There's no more maths. Yeah. Math studies was starting to become a problem for the universities in trying to put students in a particular like level playing field, and so we're trying to admit students that are from the IB with maybe gaps in their math background. Maybe they've taken a bunch of other HLs. But they, instead of doing the math standard level, which was a more challenging course than the studies, so what they tried to do was, by eliminating math studies, is create an applications kind of math at a standard level, which is, everybody should know this math, and statistics are important. So ultimately what they tried to do was, I think, establish programs that universities would look at, because they all go through vetting processes. Like the AP exams are pretty much, like the AP curriculum comes from college professors. They kind of build consensus around it. The IB changes its curriculum every 5 years, so for each subject. So every 5 years we get a new syllabus. So things change. Like in psychology, we never used to teach about animal experimentation. Now that's a new syllabus.
We have a whole like ERQ and paper 2 for that too.
Yeah. They did away with options and reformed options and things like that. Yeah.
Are IB classes also inspired by or influenced by colleges, professors also?
Yeah. Yes. In some level, in some ways, they kind of surpassed that first year of college in certain ways. Like you wouldn't really till maybe you're like a junior in college even start looking at something like an inferential statistic in psychology. So in some cases they move further along to maybe a set of prescribed skills that go along with this subject in addition to the knowledge. But some of the subjects are, you take an American psychology class versus the one in the UK, they're going to be very different approaches. The UK is going to be much more like know this research study, whereas in the United States, nobody cares about knowing of the research. They know, but they care about the research, but they don't necessarily care about being able to regurgitate back to you the aims, methods, and findings.
procedures.
Yeah.
But also, just to break off of this topic for a
Sure.
bit. Yeah, okay, I know students complain quite a bit about the workload in
All
the
the
IB.
time.
all the time. But are teachers also kind of overworked too? Like insanely overworked?
Teaching an IB class is quite challenging.
Yes.
It is quite challenging, and in some cases, the more experience you have in teaching an IB class, the easier it definitely becomes to understand how to craft lessons, how to get students to interact with the learning. So knowing how to give good feedback on the internal assessment is a very important thing. So new teachers will often struggle with new subjects new to the IB. But yes, teachers do feel stressed out and pressured because often a lot of what they're doing is going to be quality checked by how you do on exams. And the internal assessment is, when we send off a portion of our assessments for somebody else to score, they're not really scoring the students, they're scoring the teachers on how well the teachers can apply the mark schemes. And then we give predicted grades, and then we look to see if our predicted grades were congruent to the actual grades, and then there's all kinds of concerns that students have, that everybody involved has when that doesn't match up. Like this past year was a very weird year in that student scores were really dependent on
their
this,
IAs
or on 6 years of IB predicted grades from
history.
school.
Now, on that note, so I've heard that for teachers to be able to do the IB diploma, they have to go through training with the IB, right? Or
Depends. It's encouraged, and we as a school will train teachers. We won't. As a school, we have never, at least in my time, have never allowed or never, said no to training to teachers going to a workshop. And workshops are not, they're 3-day workshops that are face to face that, you learn, you actually network with other IB teachers, and where you get ideas and you can share how to approach topics in the IB in the syllabus. TOK teachers all need workshops. They all get trained. So every TOK teacher has to have a training. And other than that, the IB says, you just need at least one teacher trained in a subject if you're going to offer it. So we have 4 SL English teachers, or 4 Lang and Lit teachers. We would only need one to have a workshop, because then, and that's the benefit of having 4 Lang and Lit teachers. They can work together and do the heavy lifting together.
now on that note, I heard you mention networking with other schools and entire school. What kind of benefits or advantages that provides, or what kind of things you gain from it a lot?
There's a huge network in Bangkok. In fact, I attend meetings basically triannually. I meet with other IB coordinators, and we have big agendas with 15, 16 things that need to be addressed, and then there's notes taken on these agenda points and sent to Singapore, which is kind of the home office for our region.
for the Southeast Asia.
And these are things that we get concerned about. We're concerned about, how the IB hasn't communicated something very well. We don't like it. Sometimes we don't like the exam schedule, how they'll schedule certain exams around the same time, and why would you do that? So it's a period of complaining. But then you also get a situation where a few years ago, we used to give core points for predicted grades. So if you need your predicted grades for university, we would use this formula for core points. But then in conversations with other coordinators at schools, BPS and this, that come up with a better way to give those core points based on the average the students give. So everybody gets 2 core points instead of 1, 2, or 3. How do we do? We just share our practices and share. I share policies with other teachers about literacy, or I'm sorry, about language. How do you block out for core time? These are we go to these meetings and in the network and share
things work.
share systems, things like that.
I think, well, from your 10 years, long time. From all those times that you've been, I guess, teaching the IB diploma and working with it, what do you think is the biggest struggles that students have run into, or at least when being successful in the IB diploma?
The biggest struggle I've always seen with the IB students is when it comes to like the classes, it's having a particular kind of plan for how you would meet the objectives of that class. Because some classes are going to require more time than others. And so it's kind of being very intuitive about like, all right, I'm going to have to set this side aside. And then when you start to see like larger things starting to get rolled out, like an IA, or even like a TOK essay, my thing that I've seen over the years is almost like a launching issue. Students, it's hard to start those kinds of exercises. And then what will happen is it'll kind of push back and cascade into all these other deadlines. And so now you're overwhelmed because you've got 4 or 5 things and you're already past the deadline. So there's a cascade issue that comes with being paralyzed or not being able to launch like a big thing. So I encourage teachers, you start off small. You start off small, like break up these big things. Checklists are good. Checklists are very effective. But then what we want to do is make sure that students don't miss out on the feedback process with the teacher, because that's what I've seen a lot of times with extended essays, TOK essays, that students will miss all those, the deadline for the plan and the deadline for the first draft. And all of a sudden, like the thing you're going to send to the IB is something that's not been looked at by a teacher. You were never able to kind of like just something very small could have been the difference between a B and a D, right? Like so I think the biggest issue is paralysis, launching. Students get paralyzed. Like, I've got so much going on, and I don't even know where to start, or I don't even know how to start this, and then they miss out on the feedback from the teacher.
So knowing what you know, knowing how to do the things that you need to do is an issue.
Writing a TOK essay is the first time you're doing it, and if that's the case, if it's you're gonna want someone to take a look at it to say, I know what you're talking about here, or I have an idea of what you're doing with this title. If you don't get that, you're you call it like a Hail Mary. You're throwing that out, right? Like, just hope it works. And honestly, we build enough time into the schedule that there shouldn't be a need for that. But when students don't hit their deadlines, there's no such thing as perfection. And one of the smaller issues is, well, I can't give it to you because it's not perfect. I've heard that before too, and that's just the IB doesn't. The IB is not looking for perfection. Nobody's looking for even the AP doesn't look for perfection, because out of 150 marks, you can get 112 and still get a 5 in one class. So nobody's looking for perfect, right? But by missing deadlines, you get a cascade effect where all the other deadlines start to run into each other. And now you have your sustained stress response, which is
yeah. Any more questions?
I mean, on that note, on like getting like starting,
sure.
I've heard it's probably like the hardest part. How would you like say what are some like things students can try to do to
overcome it?
To like maybe try to like overcome that step?
The paralysis at the beginning.
I'd say
I mean, if it's like something wide open like the math exploration, right? you tap into maybe what's out there. You know what I mean? Like, because that's a data driven. Like you gotta establish, you gotta find data, and you really got to start with kind of like your own interests too, especially with like the EE. There's students like, I'm interested in this, and I'm like, really? Are you? Like, because that doesn't sound interesting at all. and so I think like 9 times out of 10, like you might have a variety of ideas into that assignment. But ultimately, you got to go with the one that's going to give you the most traction. So that's where you could talk to your teacher about it. That like when I get to like a point where most students have already written their draft, and you've got one other student over there who hasn't even started, that problem should have been solved 6 months ago. But if 6 months ago was the best time to plant a tree, second best time is now. So now we just kind of move forward with that and already have maybe in some cases like prescribed or planned out reasonable places to go. I think students should lose choice at a certain point, right? You're gonna, like, if we want you to be successful, we're gonna have to take away some of the freedoms, you know, because we gave you freedom to pick your E, to do all these things, but we're at a certain point now, like the zero barrier, where you're gonna have to, if you want an IB diploma, you're gonna have to write an E, and it's not gonna write itself in 3 months. So we're gonna pick your topic for you. We're gonna pick your subject. In math, it's gonna be here's 7 or 8, data-driven exploration questions. So you're gonna go out and get data.
I guess that's about all the questions I have for now. You got anything?
You got like one question about this weird question about coffee and studying.
I'm trying to ignore that on purpose.
Weird question.
Well, this is more a question for me rather than anybody else, but do you think coffee is a viable option for keeping yourself productive in the IB diploma?
No.
Or do you think people should rely on?
Not for young adults. No. Young adults shouldn't
drink coffee.
No.
I don't see the need for it. I know adults that don't drink coffee. I drink coffee, and I forgot why I even started. But it was a long time ago, and it was after school. Like I would, it's not a lot. Sleep is a big one. Sleep is
a big one. But it's difficult to get sometimes. No?
I'm not saying it's not, but we know an hour of sleep versus an hour of work is going to give you better benefits down the long run. And again, like I don't know. Like that's one of the big questions we have at RAS is we don't know how much homework you have. Like I don't know. I know how much I assign. Every single teacher knows how much they assign,
but they don't know how much.
But we never get together to understand what that's like over the long haul, over a week, over a month, over a day. Like how much are we expecting you to do at home? Now, if it's over 2 hours, I think that's a lot, right? Because you're at school for, a long time, then you got to get some sleep for that long time, which gives you a little bit of window to even, remember who your parents are, maybe have some friends. Like
maybe.
Yeah. So these are and these things are important for mental health, good mental health. So again, like I think in the IB diploma, if you're doing more than 2 hours of homework, and you haven't planned ahead to figure out like how to keep that there, then you're suffering. You're suffering.
Do you count homework and studying as, I guess, the same things?
Yeah, I do. If it's engaged, deliberate practice is studying. That's what I operationally define studying. Engaged, deliberate practice. Then we're going to say that, that's in the 2 hours.
I would say watching videos on a topic while scrolling through your phone and social media doesn't count as engaging study.
If you're engaged for 2 hours, you think that's definitely enough time for somebody to finish.
I do. I think 2 hours at home because I don't know what else you're gonna. You should be having conversations, family meals, or connecting with your family on a regular basis. That's good. Okay. What always cracks me up is like on Fridays. I think I brought this up before. It's like you look out at the flagpole in the ceremony and you see, especially the seniors, they all got like textbooks out, pulling them out, and like because obviously they got a test coming up first block or whatever, and you know they're going through the textbook and holding it there, and it's like that's not studying.
That's cramming.
Trying to get them in the short
Yeah,
term.
they're trying to, you know, it's just, but that's a natural tendency for people to do.
I just feel like since like lots of people do it, they also feel like if a lot of people are doing it, then it's probably somewhat effective, so they started doing it. Same kind of way, like at least like my opinions with coffee. I feel like, you know, like there's like lots of media or like TV shows, movies. They're like you have like a scene where a person's studying, you have them like drinking coffee, pouring in, their eyes darken. So hey, they're drinking coffee and it's working for them staying up. I should drink coffee too, because I mean that's also how like initially like a little bit drink about coffee.
True. I mean, I'm also kind of guilty for this too.
Drinking coffee at like 8 o'clock at night. I
Oh,
vision.
Yeah. 8 o'clock at night. You're not gonna be able to sleep.
Yeah,
I've been told
wanting to stay up to watch like the Late Show or something like that. that's why you do that.
But before, do you think if you drink it before like 5 p.m., you'd be able to at least manage a healthy sleep?
It was temporary effects, so it'll wear off.
It's temporary.
Yeah.
It's better drinking Red Bulls.
Red Bull.
Yeah, the caffeine drinks. Not good.
That's about all the questions I have. I think Shin's also probably exhausted.
I am fine.
Or I mean, he's fine. He's fine.
All right.
So yeah.
Yeah, anyhow, that's going to be it for today. We hope you guys have enjoyed listening to this episode. If you do like it, I encourage you to share to other people. And again, if anyone's interested, international guests are very welcome. Thank you for watching.
That'd be an interesting topic. All right.